as a veteran of the United States Army. Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Accountability. Transparency. Transparency. Accountability. Two words I keep hearing from every single person here. But we sit here 2 years later with not a single person having resigned, having been transparent, having been held accountable. Even though we know that there was willful dereliction of duty, and you can call it what you'd like. Maybe it's a vote of no confidence, maybe it is articles of impeachment, whatever it's deemed worthy. But I look at this at the highest level. You have the right to call yourself the Commander-in-Chief or the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of State, then the accountability stops at you. And not a single one has had the honor of standing up and saying, this was on me. I have an issue with that. And to answer former Ambassador Wagner, Representative Wagner's question of description of your sons and daughters, simple. It's a hero. I had the honor of serving in the United States Army as an Army combat veteran of the 82nd Airborne Division, where I know that Staff Sergeant Knaus had also served. And I can remember in my time of service, one of the things that we used to always look at was ensuring that we completed our missions and our objectives to the greatest extent possible. Now, I want to be clear on something by saying that. The failures that occurred in this Afghan botched withdrawal had everything to do with the suits and nothing to do with the boots. Our men and women carried out their missions, their objectives, their purpose with honor, with integrity, with courage. And they don't deserve to have the feeling as if all that they had fought and lost was for nothing. So to everyone who had served over the 20-plus years in Afghanistan or Iraq, your heroes and your service meant something. You know, when I asked Secretary Austin about what the definition of dereliction of duty is, he acknowledged my questioning. When I asked him if someone could be removed for dereliction or willful dereliction of duty, he acknowledged it, not realizing that I was talking about him. And I stand by my articles of impeachment that I've put forward against Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. And I do find that whether he found there was credible intel or not, and I'm utilizing his terminology where he talked about the identification of whether it was credible and actual intel and whether or not it could have been prevented, we all know that it could have. I've seen the intel reports, how detailed they were up to the day, how they were planning the attack, how they were readying the attack, how they were entering the city, how the planning is now completed, how the attack is imminent. And then I looked at Secretary Blinken, who actually received something. The woman who was responsible for these descent cables had 16 years plus of time where she had been reviewing these cables. And I know that Ambassador Wagner had put her on the spot because she knows about these, having served as Secretary of State. And when we asked her whether or not there's been cables who's ever had 23 diplomats sign it, she said, never during my career have I seen that. The idea that this was political optics over military strategy is the reason that we have 13 Gold Star families sitting amongst us, and I'm honored to be here. I haven't been in Congress long, but one of the things that I pledged is that I would get accountability, answers, and transparency. I think that those descent cables, as well as for those intel reports, should be declassified for the families and for the American people so we can get one of those two words, which is transparency. And Tyler, let me just tell you, You're a hero, and I'm honored to call you a brother. I'm grateful that you're here today. Your testimony is one of the strongest, and I was nearly looking like I was cutting onions because you had me tearing up so bad on that one. There should have been clear escalations of force and rules of engagements that were set forth so that you could have carried out your job and have identified the bolo and stopped this from happening. And not even during the State of the Union did President Biden once acknowledge your children or acknowledge the failures. But I won't stop fighting, whether it's to change policy whereby families do not have to come out of money first and be reimbursed, or have nonprofits step in to replace and get them to where they need to be for their final resting, as they did with Nicole, or whether it be for making sure that those who are responsible hold their hand up and try and be a dignified and honorable individual to acknowledge what happened so it doesn't happen again. I thank Chairman McCall. I thank my brother Brian Mast. I thank Ms. Dean for being here and for acknowledging the sacrifices so that we can not just look at this from a partisan perspective, but so that we can get accountability that guarantees that we don't see this again, whether it be in Iraq, whether it be in Syria, or any other future operations. But I'll tell you, the most successful and victorious battle is the one that we don't get ourselves into to begin with. We have to start prioritizing our nation, our people, our borders, and make that our priority, and not the borders and the lives 9,000 miles away. Our American lives must come first, and I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much for everything that you did. With that, I yield back.